började som ett jazzband faktiskt, och kanske är inte det en slump. Arkitektur handlar ju om både improvisation, musikalitet och tonträff och samarbete. Någonting som Atelier Oslo är kända för, inte bara med varandra utan också med andra arkitektbyråer. Om bara några veckor, den 28 mars, så öppnas ett fantastiskt bibliotek i Oslo som de har ritat, det nya Deichman-biblioteket. Och det är ett framtidsbibliotek på fler än ett sätt. Där ryms också The Future Library Project, ett projekt där 100 författare under 100 års tid lämnar in 100 manus som ska läsas om 100 år först. Det här är något som får en kulturtants hjärta att klappa lite extra hårt. Ja, så ta gott emot Jonas Norstedt och Marius Mowe från Atelier Oslo.
Hej! Fantastisk att få komma hit och träffa så många kollegor. Vi har hört att det har varit norrmän här för och att de inte förstod vad vi sa. Så vi har blivit bett om oss att prata på engelsk. Atelier Oslo blev startet, som vi kanske har fått höra allerede, av Jonas och Nils Ole, Thomas och mig. Ja, jag switchar till engelsk för säkerhets skull. This is an impression of the span of some of our work. Public buildings, housing projects, quite a few smaller projects, and rehabilitation of cultural heritage projects, and a lot of collaboration projects. Today we will speak about 4 projects. I will start with our first project. That was a collaboration. Then I will speak a little bit about the library, and then Jonas will take over. So why collaboration? I guess I could long sometimes to this age where the architect could, like we see here, instruct the workers. The building was maybe quite simple technically, some bricks and some doors and windows, that's about it. Today we work in a much more complex reality. This is organization chart of the Deichman Library project, where you see the architect is one of many consultants. You have all the contractors and subcontractors. You have different committees. The client is kind of dispersed into different project managers, committees, and everything is very complex. So we think you have to collaborate. That is what we do. I don't know how it is in Sweden, but in Norway, we as architects, we don't enjoy this kind of automatic respect necessarily in all meetings with consultants or user groups. I think it can be tough. You cannot instruct like we saw Frank Lloyd Wright did. So how to handle these complex processes? So of course we are used to working with the engineers, collaborating, we say, but maybe it's more kind of instructing back and forth because we have different disciplines. When the electrical engineer says, okay, this converter technical thing has to have this size and has to be located here, and then you cannot really argue with that. That is his discipline. But as we have done when we have been working with other architects, you are on the same in the same discipline. So how then to solve disagreements, or how to evaluate between different concepts that could come up between the architects. So we have struggled a lot how to find some methods or tools how to work together. And we find that maybe these tools are also good, not only between architects' companies, but also internally in our office. And again, also meeting with the consultants and the user groups, and maybe getting more a feeling of working together rather than instructing each other. So this is our first project, which we did with some French architects, also young and ambitious. It was the city of Sandnes on the western coast of Norway. Traditional pedestrian shopping street that was dying because of urban development along the harbor with shopping malls, and so the city really wanted to do something to bring some life into this old pedestrian street. They asked for a competition with a covered small plaza with a stage and an amphi seating. So we started working, 7 partners, trying to find out how to work together. Lots of ambitions. We had all the time in the world. We were young, no families. But how to start, how to work. We, of course, did a lot of analysis, and we visited the site, and we spent time together to get to know each other. But, of course, you can analyze as much as you want the program, but it doesn't necessarily come out the project. I mean, in architecture, that is what is so fascinating. There are many right answers. You cannot put all information into a robot and out comes the perfect project. So there will be many right answers. So we try to formulate a kind of common ambition on top of understanding the program, the wish of the client, and the functional needs and everything. What kind of place do we want to create? So this image became a kind of reference to this common ambition. An informal place, flexible, changing, with this kind of quality of light and space. So we suggested a quite simple, bold volume to give some kind of positive input to this pedestrian street. We rejected this idea of the fixed stage and seating. We said, no, this should be much more informal, just the plaza floor floating between these columns. And we really tried to develop the structure so it could play with the light and changing weather. And yeah, so this is how it turned out. So the Deichman Library project. Deichman is the public libraries of Oslo. The former main public library that was now to be replaced was built in 1932. Already when it opened, it was criticized of being too formal, too inaccessible with all these steps. So the city called for a new library, 20 international architects competed. It was a concept competition also about an urban development on the north side of the opera. And they have been working 30 years, searching for a new site, starting projects, These diagrams that we see here is from Oma and Rex, who worked several years with a project where now the National Gallery have their new building. But the main ambition of the librarians was to make a new kind of library that is structured not around, as we see here, the Dewey system, how the books are organized so you can find the right books, but rather around the users, how they move and what they do. So then again, we analyzed the program, but also tried to formulate some more personal ambitions of what kind of space we wanted to create. The librarians talked a lot about serendipity, that when you come to the library, you might have an idea that I want to find this book and bring it with me home and read it. But the librarians, of course, want that, okay, you go for this book, but on the way you are inspired to explore other books, you see some kind of event happening, and you're dragged more and more into the library, and you come home maybe with more books and have been to lectures and everything. So this, how to make a space that inspires this kind of exploration, was an important ambition. Then something about the library being, what is the new library? It should be flexible, it could change, we don't know what it will be in the future. This building was to stand for 200 years, but in 15 years we don't know what is the need of the library. So we said it must have some permanent elements that could stay over time, but then also give space for this kind of flexibility, some kind of infrastructure that would support the change of the library. So going to the site, it was some limitations of the site. This was more or less the zoning plan envelope that we worked with. The library filled only 1/3 of this volume that we see here. And then we start working. A lot of physical models, and trying to work together to avoid this kind of personal ownership of the ideas, because that can be very difficult to handle in the process. So if you have developed lots of ideas together, it's more easy to evaluate them in an objective way. One solution could be to build a horizontal library. That was tempting, of course, to have good contact with the street, let the people directly into the library. But it was some challenges with the street that was crossing, and we thought also maybe it's not good for the city to have this monofunctional thing, and also for our ambition of have this interconnected space where you can see things that you didn't plan, you are inspired to explore more. Here it would be very long distances. We could put the library to the one side or the other side. This was the obvious placement because you have the public space in front, but the site was a little bit too little. But by cantilevering some of the volume above a restricted sight line and the street behind, we managed to place the program inside what we thought was the right site. So we ended up with a volume that was quite vertical, with 5 main floors, plus a basement and plus mezzanines. So one main challenge with the library was how to connect these floors and inspire the people to explore the different parts of the building. So we introduced 3 diagonal atriums that penetrates the building from 3 main entrances. This is a competition model showing that internal void as a volume. We organized all the small rooms around the 3 vertical cores containing the infrastructure to maintain an open space where you can explore to see what is around the corner, and you get this, in the open plan you get different spaces that could have smaller events, that you don't have to enter through a door to go to a small lecture or reading place. Here we see axonometrics of the ground floor, where you enter from 3 directions into a central plaza. And you circulate up through the diagonal light shafts, atriums. They meet in the 3rd floor to create a big atrium. So there's lots of small places connected into this big space. Different intimate spaces where you can almost touch the floor into very open big spaces. Here we are in the basement where you can see all the way out from the big theater hall. We struggled a lot to keep this theater open, so you can see from the entrance, you can see all the way down to the stage to see some events happening. A gallery in the basement where you can almost touch the floor. And working your way up, getting a glimpse from each of the 3 entrances up through the building, up to the sky, to spark a curiosity to explore the building. And we see these mezzanines also on the edges around this atrium where it's lots of reading spaces. This is not a traditional library where you have these closed reading rooms. You read in a social space in the open. And all the small rooms around the course are open niches, more spaces than they ask for, but yeah, opens in 3 weeks.
So welcome to Oslo. I will continue with 2 more projects that we are working with now and have been working with. The first is a cultural building in Oslo called Sentralen. It used to be the former offices of Norway's largest bank, DNB. And they launched a program in 2012 because the bank moved away and the foundation bought the building, or the buildings, there are 2 buildings, not knowing what to do with them. And they launched a program for architects asking for like ideas, but not architectural drawings, description of processes, ideas, and so on. And we were lucky to win that competition. This is how the building looked like. It was this kind of enormous amount of false ceilings, carpets, additions of walls, partition walls, furnitures added for the last 40 years. And it was impossible to understand what the building really looked like, or the buildings. Except of some really, really great kind of small spaces in between, or larger spaces. We won the competition because we were very interested in the buildings themselves, and we described the process where we actually worked to, or wanted to work with the buildings so that we kind of used the structure as much as possible without kind of adding a lot of things. With one exception, we needed a new main circulation to add the 2 buildings together, to make them really work together in a new, more effective way. So we prepared a little film for you to show just this kind of spatial sequence. There's not so many people here. It's filmed last week, 7 o'clock in the morning, because with the drone it's not totally legal in Norway. But what is so fascinating with this kind of project, and why we love it so much, is that you don't really have control of what you find and the findings. And for us, when we started to strip away all these layers of additions, suddenly it appeared this kind of amazing kind of qualities, this kind of brick. We added some new holes to make the stair connect the 2 buildings. And just the materiality, it's so great. And what is fascinating for us is that suddenly appears something beyond our control, something that we have to work with and not against. And this kind of way to deal with the uncontrolled, for us, it creates a kind of new type of architecture that we would not be able to build ourselves from scratch. So here you see the sequence of through the main circulation that connects the two buildings. This used to be outside the atrium, now it's inside. It's also the natural ventilation for the whole building. So on the right side, the air comes in during the night and cool down the building. And on top, there's this new ceiling. And then you have all these stairways. This kind of almost Pyrenean way of moving up, but actually it's very rational. It connects really the places you want to connect. And it connects this kind of spaces. It's a very deep building, so we also worked with ways to bring the light through the building and down into the core. And as you move up the building, you enter a sequence of rooms that have a kind of very specific purpose for these cultural activities. And there's a restaurant and cafe on the ground floor, so the whole city is invited in. And this main room for the brokers, it became a large new venue place for 800 people, a big stage for Oslo. And those jewels that we found were restored. We found back the old colors, or the original colors, and just kind of left it very, very untouched. So for us, this contrast between this really, really fine and delicate old stuff combined with this raw new findings is a very inspiring way to work for us. The second building that I will show you very quickly is the old American embassy in Norway, made by Saarinen in the late 50s. It's located in a great space, or great place in Oslo, very close to the royal castle and the park. But it has been totally sealed off for the last 30 years. And it has been this kind of secret jewel in Oslo that everybody knows about, but very few have visited. So the only way to know the building has been through photographies, seeing this amazing facade work, this entrance where you see the American flag through the atrium. And this is actually an architectural invention. It's the first lobby atrium, according to the Americans, in the world. And as you see, it's a masterpiece. It's really, really great. And we were super curious to understand what were left of this. We started to work with this quite recently, this building. And we're just in the process now of starting up the work. Here you see a tulip bench. It's like the only kind of in the world, growing up from the travertine floor. But you also have this kind of things. All the nice original furnitures are removed. Blue carpets everywhere. Electrical cables. This used to be the old library that were open to the public. It's totally rebuilt. And now we have to go back to old kind of drawings, old photography, to see if there's any possibility to reconstruct. And in kind of difference from the last project, this will be a totally different approach. Here it's much more to recreate the feeling of the place. Now we are working with the technical ventilation system that goes through the ceiling, invisible through the ceiling. We try to find all the drawings of the furniture, so on. And of course, we look for these fantastic details. For instance, this very subtle ornamentations, materiality, how they meet, how they are kind of formed, electrical sockets and switches, handlebars, all these kind of things, and also all the traces that the Americans have left. This is a kind of security wall that is made probably in the 80s or something, with the really thick steel. We don't know what to do with all these things, but we are working with it now. And in, let's say, 1.5 to 2 years, you're all welcome to have a drink and see the first lobby atrium in the world. So, thank you very much.